Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing a complete explanation of Class 11 Legal Studies, Chapter 1, Theory of State. The chapter begins with the definition of state, and while several political thinkers have propounded their own definition of state, the most widely accepted and simple definition of state is a politically organized society. So we know that politically means anything related to the government, a set of activities that govern a society. Organized means that there's a structure and a system, and society is the aggregate of people living together. So through this we understand that a state is a systematic group of people that live together with a form of government. This can be better understood through understanding the evolution of state and the elements of state. So, state emerged from a society. It's not the other way around. First, people came together to form a society, and then they formed a state. So, in the early days, if we look at the evolution of humans, people were dispersed across the land. They were separated. But after a few years, they came together for their collective benefit. For example, instead of hunting by themselves, they could form a society together and hunt for the collective benefit and mutual sharing of resources between that society. So the first element of the state was formed, which is population. So when people came together, they formed a population. They formed a group of people or a society. The next step was that they defined the area that they lived in as their own territory, and no one else could enter that area. So that was the second element of state, which is territory. So once they formed a group together, they were able to share their mutual resources for their collective benefit. They defined the area that they lived in as their own, and that's formed as a territory. The third step was forming a government. So if they wanted efficient usage of resources and preventing misinterpretation of laws and rules and ensure a stable society with social peace and harmony, they formed a government, which could have taken several forms. It could have been a direct democracy, an aristocracy, a monarchy. It depended on the type of state, but at the end of the day, they formed a government, which was a body that ruled over the entire population as a whole for efficient use of resources and upholding social harmony and peace. So this was the third step, which was government. The last element of the state was sovereignty. So when the centralized power or the government was exercised over the defined territory with no intervention from foreign forces, and all the people that lived in that territory gave their unquestioned obedience to the rulers or the government, this is known as a sovereign power or sovereignty. And this was the fourth and integral element of the state. So there's no state without sovereignty. You can have a country with population, territory, and government, but if there's no sovereignty, then there's no state. Because in the case of sovereignty, people accept the government, they accept their territory, and they give their unquestioned obedience. And also, no foreign forces or foreign players can enter into the decision-making powers of this centralized power. So the landmass that's clearly defined can only be controlled by the domestic government or the municipal government. But why do we need a state in the first place? Why can't we just live in harmony together? Well, human nature suggests that we can never live in harmony without a set of rules that everyone must abide by. Because there are always people that misinterpret the rules or misuse the lack of rules to promote their self-interest and put others' lives at risk. For example, if there were no rules, then people would be exploiting, using resources indiscriminately, and they could practically do anything. And this is a state of anarchy. This was called a state of nature. So when we were all born onto this earth, this was called the state of nature, where there was no organized state and people lived together with no organization or system. So some theorists suggest that the state of nature was full of chaos, short, brutish lives. Every man was an enemy to another man. And overall, there was a lack of general consensus among the people to what is correct and what is wrong. So, state brought an organization among the society. It brought rules and regulations that everyone must follow. And also, in terms of resources, it allowed people to collectively use their resources for mutual benefits. So instead of everyone hunting for their own food, the state hunted for everyone through a group of highly skilled or trained hunters, and those resources were used and shared amongst the entire society as a whole. So that was a collective usage of resources for mutual benefits. Also, there was a maintenance of peace and harmony because people had to abide by the rules and regulations, and they were assured that there would be no state of anarchy because these rules could be enforced, and they were also legally binding on the people. So these are the reasons why we need a state. There were several theories of states given by different political theorists. The first theory is theory of kinship, which is propounded by the Greek political thinker Aristotle. According to the theory of kinship, the state originated from the family. So a village was formed based on a family. So there's first two people, a male and a female, that gave birth to several children, and these children married one another to form a larger family, and this slowly formed a hamlet, and this grew into a village. So all the people in a village, which was the lowest population is a village, right? That's the lowest organization of society. So every village consisted of people that shared the same bloodline, the same lineage. And the ruler of this state, based on this theory of kinship, was the oldest person, or the origin of the family. So in this case, it would be the first fathers who gave rise to the entire family. We can compare this theory to a family tree when we trace down our descendants. So first we have our grandparents who gave birth to our parents, and our parents gave birth to us. So in this theory, the leader of the state is our grandparents, the top of the family tree. And the state is heavily dependent on bloodline and lineage. The second theory was Patriarchal Theory, which was propounded by Sir Henry May. And it was an extension of Aristotle's theory of kinship. However, it proposed and promoted the dominance of male in society. That's why patriarchal means male chauvinism, or dominance of male. And so the ruler of the state and the head of the family were played by the same person. The role was played by the same person, which is the eldest male in the society. Now, matriarchal theory was a complete contrast to what patriarchal theory suggested. In matriarchal theory, it was based on the fact that the eldest female was the head of the family and the head of the society and head of the state. So in matriarchal societies, the population of females was relatively lower, and females were valued in this type of society because obviously their population is lower and they have to give birth to the future generation. So they were highly regarded as the leaders of the society. And since there was a lower population of females, one female married multiple males and maintained relations with multiple males to just promulgate and ensure the longevity of the entire species. So that's why they followed a practice known as polyandry, which means that one female marries multiple males at the same time. So it's a complete contrast of what we understood in patriarchal theory. And in this case, the eldest female has the authority over the family and the society. It's also known as matrias poestas. The fourth theory was the divine theory, which was scrapped with the entrance of social contract theory. This formed the basis for several monarchs and tyrants. Essentially, these tyrants believed that they were an agent of some supernatural force or God himself, and they were sent from the sky to rule over the people. And this inculcated a fear amongst the common people, and they were afraid to question the state, because if they did, they would be going against their religion. It would be considered as blasphemy. So divine theory promulgated that the rulers were agents of God sent from the sky, and they couldn't be questioned, and any dissent or defiance against the state was not encouraged and repressed. The last theory was the social contract theory, which is forming the modern basis of democracies that we see today. And this theory of state is still in practice in most countries across the world. Social contract theory is based on the idea that people should form a contract between their rulers. And this contract is formed on the basis of mutual consent and agreement between the people. There were three main theorists that gave this theory, and they had differing ideas. The first theorist was Thomas Hobbes. According to Thomas Hobbes, the former state of nature, which was unorganized, gave rise to short, brutish lives, and every man was enemy to the other man. The people were greedy, and they only cared about their self-interests and collecting their own resources, and there was no general consensus among the people. So his theory of social contract propounded the fact that people should surrender their natural rights, so their rights over their land, and they should surrender these rights for civil rights. And once the land is in control of the supreme ruler, the ruler would take all the decisions over that piece of land, over that territory. However, the major pitfall with this theory was that the ruler himself was not a part of the theory. So he could exercise unlimited power. There's no limitation on what he could do, and the people had to give their unquestioned obedience to the ruler. The second theory was promulgated by John Locke, and in this theory it was based on minimalism. And since John Locke himself was a classical liberal, he promoted a social contract theory where the role of the government was very minimal. It was like a night guard, which only prevented the state from any foreign invasions and also maintained social peace and harmony. In this theory, the ruler was also a part of the contract, and in case he did not promote the interests of the people, he could be overthrown and replaced by another leader. The last theories on social contract was given by Jacques Rousseau, J.J. Rousseau, and he believed in direct democracy. A major difference between Thomas Hobbes versus John Locke and J.J. Rousseau was that Thomas Hobbes believed the state of nature was chaos, whereas John Locke and Rousseau believed that the state of nature was peaceful and the people were also able to work in harmony. However, John Locke believed that in a state of nature, people had different interpretations on law, and this led to misconceptions, and it was complicated to have a different interpretation for every law. For example, one person believes that freedom of religion is essential, whereas another person interpreted the rules differently. He could think that freedom of religion is unnecessary. So to prevent these misconceptions and arguments between people, social contract established a universally guaranteed set of rules and regulations that everyone accepted and had to follow. In Rousseau's theory, he believed in direct democracy, where every decision would be taken by the majority of the people. This was known as the general will or the common good of the people. This idea was widely criticized because it required the common people who are relatively naive to enter the political sphere, and also it was always in fear of destabilization of the government, because if majority of the people want to overthrow the social contract, they could do that, because that's what his theory was based on. People collectively vote for every single decision. So if they were planning on building a new temple or a new Parthenon or a new stadium, the entire people, the collective society would vote, and if majority of the people thought yes, they would continue with building whatever they wanted. And if they said no, then they would disagree. They would debate, and depending on the final decision, they would either build or not build the facility. So this is known as a plebiscite, a referendum, or an initiative. And the problem is that there's no representatives, and you can't accommodate diversity. And if people want to overthrow the social contract, they can. So the government is always in fear of destabilization. This was the two major critics of Rousseau's theory. And most people agree and widely promoted John Locke's theory, which was based on minimal government. So now let's look at the different roles of the state. Every state has different roles that it wishes to protect and play. And so depending on the role of the state, the form of government can also vary. So the first role of the state was minimal state. Remember that this topic can also be referred to as types of states. So minimal state was promoted by classical liberals such as John Locke, and it was based on the theory of laissez-faire, which meant let it be, leave it alone. So the state was only intended to prevent social attacks or a threat to social harmony. So it meant to preserve peace, prevent anarchy, and protect the state from any external invasions. But in terms of economic activity and social activity, the government was not to interfere. So this was known as a minimal state, a minimal role, limited government. The next state was a developmental state. In developmental state, the state was extensively involved in the economic development. So it played an essential role in harnessing resources and producing goods and services through incentives. And the ultimate goal of the state was economic development and growth. The third state is social democratic state, and this was promoted by democratic socialists and modern Democrats and modern liberals. So in this case, the goal of the state was to promote ideas and values and preserve these values such as justice, equality, freedom, secularism, nationalism, and preserve these values in the society and ensure that these are always being enforced. And by providing these values, the state believes that the people have the means through which they can achieve economic development. So in this state, there's minimal intervention in terms of economy, and they only protect these values such as justice, equality, and freedom. The fourth type of state is a collectivized state, and in this case, it forms the model of communism. So the state owns, consumes, and distributes all the resources. So the state, it harnesses the resources, it creates employment, it provides the basic essentials to the people, and the entire economy is controlled by the state. And so the best example is the People's Republic of China and the former Soviet Union. These are communist states. The fifth type of state is totalitarian state. So in this state, the ruler cannot be questioned. His command is law, and no one can defy, disagree, or provide any form of dissent against the state. This was widely promoted by these dictators such as Hegel, Mussolini, Hitler, and even modern dictators such from today. So in totalitarian state, the people have no role. The ruler controls everything. This is quite similar to Thomas Hobbes' theory on social contract. And the last role of state is a modern welfare state, which most mixed economy states are following today. So in modern welfare states, the government provides basic necessities and facilities such as irrigation, infrastructure, pension, social security, education, healthcare, any public facilities, building roads, bridges, playgrounds, transportation, and everything that we see around us has some contribution from the state itself. So it's not completely owned by the private players, and it's not also completely owned by the government. There's a public-private partnership model in place, and the state provides these. It's a combination of social democratic states, collectivized states, and minimal states. So it doesn't have its own identity. It's more of a mix of the best features of every type of state that we discussed earlier, except totalitarian state. There's no intervention of totalitarian state in modern welfare states. So India is the best example of a modern welfare state. Our government cooperates with public partners to provide all the infrastructure that we see around us today. The roads, the bridges, the playgrounds, the buildings, headlights, streetlights, and it ensures the preservation of essential values such as justice, equality, and freedom as well through the Constitution. So this completes the video. I hope you had an overview of the entire chapter. Stay tuned for more videos. As always, I hope you had a good learning experience, and until the next one, this is Nishan signing off. Peace.